is the atzmius shaboy, is the etzem that it's carrying, that it's transmitting, and that's pshittus. This is very.
Finish. Ubekalim, finish. Ubekalim. Agam shemetarim yisoed.
So here the opposite.
Gabas hakelim aloed. Same
side. Even though they describe the energy, what is this
Gabrus? What is Misgabus?
And there's Misgabus. There, Mitzias, identity dominates. So basically, going back to, remember we said with the flame, with the light, the energy assumes the properties of the container assumes the properties of the energy, back to the interface. So, but still, just because each one assumes it, it's still different. In energy, what dominates is the source, and therefore the lack of definition, even though the energy already is a form of definition, and must have a form of definition, an expression. And containers is the opposite. Even though it's a container and it's expressing and describing the energy, but what dominates there is its identity and personality. Okay, so what you have here is really the perfect interface. Because energy has identity, it has to have expression. Container has to have some element of the energy, and each one brings that other component into it.
Yeah, but in each one, this Gabus is the opposite.
In its natural form, yeah.
The part that wins.
Sometimes and that's why the containers are called only kid musenu levad, not batsalmenu. However, the general thing of shape and image is primarily in the level of the kelim. So generally speaking,
I have to go. You continue, okay?
We're almost. I'm just.
Okay, stay as long as you want. I have to go.
I'm going to close in that. So now he after he gave this whole introduction that it's containers, energy and containers, he's saying, however, at the end of the day, the general thing of shape and form is in the containers, not the energy. So really, it's like a second interpretation. He's breaking it down further. So till now, the energy is selim, and the container is mus. He's going to now say that the containers themselves. The inner container is selim and the outer container is mus. Okay? So don't get confused. That's now going just a different track now, going back actually to where he began.
What is more like function?
And yes, it's going to be more function, and selim is more description. Yeah.
Why does he make a change?
He doesn't make a change. He's being realistic. Selim and mus generally is eris and kalim. And now he's going back to the context of the whole Mamorim that Primus. Remember, in general, Eir and Keli is the interface. More specifically, Primus and Keli and Janus and Keli. It's just the microcosm. It's not a change. It's thorough, and it's explaining it on all levels. Eir has an element of Tzelem, and Keli is mus. Now he says, Omnam. The general Inyan, when you talk about shape and form, it's primarily coming in the level of the containers. Bear in mind the whole time, we're talking about interface. Interface means the energy has to have part of the container, and the container has to have part of the energy, and then the containers themselves, there's levels. It's all a process of how to connect us with the divine. Okay. And both levels of Tzelem and Mus are both in the containers. Because the Eris in general are Pshittis. You can't call them even Tzelem. They're pshittas. They're indivisible. They're amorphous. What do we say? They're undefined. And they're unlimited. And the containers are the ones that limit and create a shape and give personality and character to the energy. Yet in the containers, salmenu is the essential surah. It's the second interpretation of the parentheses. It means the fundamental, the essential shape that is engraved in the essence, which is now the light. And K'mnusenu, like he said before, is a shape from a shape which is separate from the essence. So now the same thing that he discussed in Eris and Kalim is carrying it to the next, to a lower level. In Kalim itself, you also have these two dimensions. And we'll understand this with an example of the shape of a chesem, a seal.
Signet ring.
Huh?
Signet ring. A seal.
Chesem is a seal.
Seal.
It could also be a signet ring. A seal is what? A seal is what? Is an impression on, let's say, a
Wax.
piece of wax or rubber, right?
Mhm.
And you
Rubber stamp. People understand that.
okay, rubber stamp. Okay, or a corporate seal. Okay, yeah, and you pressure with some pressure, place it on paper, and it creates an image. Okay,
Indentation in the paper.
an image in the paper doesn't have to be in a corporate seal. It's
Yeah, that's what it was.
It's embossed.
okay, embossed, right? Is he going to say it's embossed, Afka? So this is you see, a king would do that, Achashverosh, and they would the kingly seal. Sometimes it's actually was wax, actual wax, right? It would like be
Yeah, sealing wax. You put it in a hot thing, you put it in the wax.
right. Yeah,
It raises up on the thing.
that was like a formal
That's
decree.
That's the muscle that he wants to bring out.
Okay. The Ne'esi is Hachukim, in the Gemara in Shas, Sudas HaChesen, that's what they had. The king would have a wax, it was wax.
No, so it made an impression.
Dafka wax
And also
or
the Megillah,
Because
the
it hardened-
Megillah,
it
the
hardened
saying
and
or the
became that
signet,
way.
the word
Huh?
quote.
Because it hardened and it stayed like that.
Yeah, I understand.
Oh, that's okay.
It probably melted into the fiber of the substrate or whatever.
She says, "Shuzgam, the Ne'esi Hachukim b'Chesen, the letters that are engraved in the seal, Heinich Kokim b'Shaiva, they're engraved in wax. Kishachesh min bom ba'esin hatzirufim mamish lo yesif lo yigreba. So when you actually, one second, the Shaiva was not the original seal. The wax was what you used to create the impression. So the seal itself could have been metal or something, some
there's
hard
a wax seal.
substance.
That's protruding, yeah.
A rock, they used a stone or something engraved
Okay.
signet ring or ring
And
into the wax.
Into the wax, yeah, because that's what she's saying. So this is she's saying they become engraved in the wax that you put there when you seal it, when you mark it. But and what do you see in the wax? Exactly the same image, not more and not less. La Yesif, nothing additional, nothing less. So you're getting an exact impression of the original. But even though the shape and form of these sirufim, of these letters, of these sirufim is basically the combination of letters, this configuration, are one between the same thing what you see in the seal is what you see in the wax.
Rather, the reverse actually. When you have your signet ring, if it's bolate, if it pours
Yeah,
out,
okay,
then
but it's still the same
seal is-
image, but it's exactly the
so
same.
it's reverse.
Yeah,
Okay, but that's not relevant again. It's exact same image,
That's
however.
the thing.
Well, one is bolate and one is
It's why you look at it from this way is the way it's
Spoken by
supposed
different
to
places, but it's not relevant.
It's only emotional.
To believe this.
But Afal Pisha is hand acts. So what's it? Nevertheless, Hefresh Godly is Benaim. Nevertheless, even though it's an exact impression of the source, nothing more, nothing less. That's the point. That if it's an aleph, yes, it's a backwards aleph in the thing, but it's a frontwards aleph on the thing. But there's a big difference between them. Because the letters in the seal are part of the actual chemer, part of the actual matter, substance of the actual seal. Whereas the letters that are in the wax are separate from, they're outside, that's nivdal. They're outside of it. They're a copy of it. And he's qualifying it. Even though, even in the seal itself, the letters in the seal are not the seal itself. They're only a shape, they're only an image in the seal. In other words, the seal is a seal, and the seal has a particular configuration or a particular image. However, that image is of Tzura Atzmis. It's a fundamental, essential Tzura shape, in form because it's inside the Chesem. It's actually the Chesem, the seal, is within that, has that shape. Who nikrat selam? That's called selam. So so we have here is the seal. We have the image within the seal, which is one and an integral, an intrinsic component, intrinsic element in the seal, and that's called tselem. Tselem as in the image. Like the tselem Adam, he said the image of the human being creating the tselem Elokim. That's a tzura atzmis. It's not like, your eyes and your nose and the shape of your face and the shape of your body are some superimposed additional element. It's in you. Your body is actually in this shape, and another body is in a different shape. So it's not like, let's say put on clothing. You can dress up like a clown. You can dress up in a masquerade. When you dress up, those garments, they're not a tzura atzmis. That's not even a tzura mitzura. That's b'chlal a camouflage. But there's a shape, your face. When I see your face, I'm seeing your face. Your face is shaped this way. So in your seal, so to speak, is this image. Now, if I take a picture of your face, that's already nivdal. That's already separate. That's going to be dmus. It's going to be exactly the same as what you have in your face, but you can't call it the same thing as it's on the original face. Even though on your face itself it's also only a tzura and not your etzem. It's only a shape and form, not your essence. So we're talking here about levels of reproduction of copy.
Each one has both levels.
Yeah. The afal pishagam he ain't gufachem, and even though the image of a human being is also not the chaymer, it's not the actual essence. It's only a shape, an image within the guf, within the body of the matter, of the substance. It's definitely the second shot in the parentheses. He keeps going back. That's nechkag boy. But it's interesting why he said both. I guess maybe one because it's eir. Okay. Nechkag boy. Nevertheless, the tzir is within the etzem itself. Again, it's inseparable. The shape of your face is inseparable from your face. Even though it's still an image of something, and not the face itself, or the human being, the shape of the human being. Now he's going the other side. But the letters and the wax but the letters and the wax that are engraved there, came from the letters of the seal. That's already a shape that was made from a shape. A shape that was engraved from a shape. That's tmus. Actually, this example is excellent. I mean, I'm not say commending the old Rebbe Rashav, I guess. I mean to say, really, it would have been helpful when we were talking, because before we were all theorizing examples. This is the example. Why didn't he say this example by Eris? Interesting, that's interesting. It means it fits more to the Kalim side of things. Because the Chayri could explain all this by Eris and then just say it's also...
It's more Mushim then.
This could be the reason is because ultimately image is more in the Kalim. He said that clear. So to elaborate, before it has to remain a little more subtle. It doesn't get so specific.
Uses the colors by the way.
Yeah, the color. 1 second, but it's so this is the Chayim Pashut. But you could apply this marshal earlier just to get a clear understanding of Tzur Shena and Tzur Shniya. And now you understand. This is what he meant earlier. The first shape is the shape within the source. Within the source. The second is the impression it makes on something outside.
Yeah, but it's like he leaves out a lot of things. He leaves out the eros and everything. It just goes the end product and the beginning product. That's it.
Okay, very good. Okay, now the letters within the wax that are engraved from the letters of the seal, this is already demus, this is already form, and this is a detached image from the image within the seal, detached. You know that story, a woman was rolling a carriage with a baby, and someone comes over and says, "Oh, beautiful baby." She says, "That's nothing, you should see the picture." That's the end. So the Tzura Nivdalas has become the dominant thing in marketing today, the image,
Right.
the photoshopping of something,
Right.
the airbrushing and all that. So in other words, we worship chitzeni, we worship what he said before, descriptive name. Not the descriptive name, the pula name, the function. Not what it is, but what it looks like. like they say in Madison area, not what happened, but what people think happened.
We're taking that a little further. Could you say that?
Obviously, here it's not false, because this is Atzilus, but it could, let's put it this way. You cannot forge what am I saying? The image from the original seal,
Yes.
that's not forgeable. That's you have to have the seal. The copy, someone can say someone forged it. Right. You can already fake it. You can change it. You can falsify it.
Photoshop.
But the original template, you can't.
Like Obama's birthday.
Or the original mold, as you said. What did you call it before? Not mold. What was it? When he makes it, not template, before template.
Lithograph.
Bond.
I think in the printing process, by the way, this would be fascinating to look at Gutenberg's. What he did was with the plates, movable type. Before that, they had to make actual impressions like this. He took something and then it was just not affordable. But what he created was ability to create mass production, but also mass counterfeits, mass forgeries. Before, much harder. You had to have one, two.
There was only one source.
So basically, a sefer who writes a sefer Torah because he has to write. Right. So a sefer who writes a sefer Torah because he personally writes it. It minimizes the potential for he has to compare it to original. Okay.
Could you say that Surah Shenachika be'etzem is like you burn an image into a CD, and then
technically you
because
could.
when you retrieve that image, so that's already $200. So and the
You could say that.
$200 you can Photoshop it, but not in the way.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of examples you could use. This is so relevant. You could use examples of masters and slaves, what they call masters, and copies and second copies. Look, the fact of the matter is, I mean, today digital's changed a lot.
Yeah, you could
The original can be, copies and copies can be just like the original, even better. But hypothetically, there's a process. I mean, here.
But it's burnt into the
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I got you loud and clear. Yeah. Well, it's like anything. Like they say in hard drives, for example, even when you do all the erasing, someone can still retrieve it.
Right.
Still there.
Right,
It's not.
But there is ability to completely erase.
No, on a CD, it's not an example at all, but anyway, it's not.
You're sitting and waiting for the.
No, I'm just standing.
For your moment.
To give a good muscle.
Okay.
Oh, our record players, the same.
Let's go on.
It's not in the thing.
Digital information.
And also, you have to know, like a muscle. I'm saying, this muscle is very clear. If you're missing something, we need more masham. I don't know if are we missing something.
No.
Okay, hold a second. You want to be mavada the CDs, the first day. So let me come here. So here, how does it? Here's Muslim Surah Dalton. So, okay, Surah Sa'adam Sha'al Haluach. He's giving now another example, like the demus, like the image of a person on a luach, on a tablet.
That's the plates of the print.
A tablet. Today, the tablet. On a tablet.
An iPad.
Shenivnul min ha'adam. It's separate from the person, like I just said, a picture.
The representation of it, that's not.
He's not, even though there was photography then, he's not referring to photography as an example. He's referring to the original.
Bas relief, was that what he was talking about? Like engraved.
I guess so, or like those even later in linotypes, they made engraving with lead. It was the way they made a newspaper impression, whatever it was called. Yeah. Okay, all this we can understand now. An example for this is to understand the containers of Atzilus. That they are a Tzura Atzmis. They are a fundamental shape in the shaiva, in the seal itself. Even though they're just an image, which means that they're defined, and of substance. So it's two things, they're defined and of substance. There's two ways to, whereas air is pshitus and bligvul, not defined and not substance. Nevertheless, even though it's just a shape, but that shape is in the chemer atzmi, it's in the object itself, in this case the air. That haino air. See, there he's spelling out. Remember, I was wondering where chemer is the air. The air here is the clay, so to speak.
The opposite of what we thought.
They're like the letters that are engraved in the seal itself. not in the wax outside of it. Shatziru be'etzem chemen achesim. This image is in the actual seal.
It's the kelim.
Kamoi came b'chinas hakelim hu atzir be'etzem ha'er she'enu nivdul min ha'er. That's how the containers are a tzir, a shape in the essence of the light, of the energy, and they're not separate from the energy.
What are you talking about?
Kelim.
I understand. What's a mix of kalim or kalim or kalim? Which or are we defining?
It's
Which
the
way
essence
are we
of,
shaking?
as reflecting
It's not defining which are the in general, the Erev Atzilus.
the order.
No, we're talking
The Erev of the Kelim of Atzilus.
We want to have our two levels. We don't want to talk about it right now. We want to talk about two levels in kalim. But now we're
He's not finished. He's 1 second. He's going to get there.
All right. But it's still, that first not clear. at this point.
Okay, 1 second. He's saying now that in general, before he was speaking that the Tzelem is air and the Dmus is Kelim, that there's Tzir Atzmi in the so-called, in the seal is energy, and the Kelim are the Dmus. Now he's going and saying the general picture, and the Kelim are Nivdal, they're separate, even though they are a Tzura from the Tzura. Now he's speaking, it's all in the containers. These two levels are in the containers. He's talking, of course, the higher level of the containers now. That the containers actually are in the seal. In the air, they create the image. They impress an image in the air. 1 second.
So it's saying that the
It's
order
not separate.
receives the image from the kli. The kli is the chesed. It gives the tzura to the order.
Yeah.
No, the oil is the chesem and the image in the seal are the containers.
Yeah. Now, before we defined the chaysim as the archetypical keli.
Yeah, because before he was talking air was the first seal. That's why. V'hinei, now he's in parentheses, he's qualifying it. V'hinei, but
He says that tzir be'etzem or.
right.
The tzir is.
Keep
the
saying
etzem.
that. He said it several times.
Yeah, I know. It seems to be saying that putting the tzir into the order. No?
Like the image is in the seal. The seal is
And
a
then
seal.
the
Seal
order-
could have had no image,
Hmm.
and the image that the seal consists of
It's
is actually in the image itself, in the seal itself,
In the
not
order
outside of it.
Or,
V'hinei b'moshel ha'eis yisha b'chesim. Now, in the example of the letters in the seal, hari levad ze shatzirhu ba'etzem, and besides the fact that the image is in the actual seal, in the essence of the seal, Eizes, he's breaking it down. Shezeh masha etzem mitzuyir b'zeh. It's not just in the etzem. The etzem is actually shaped by it. In other words, it could have been an amorphous seal.
Second motion in the parentheses. It's shaped by it.
Yeah, it keeps going to that level, but I'm almost suspicious that the first description is more how Eir is Tzura,
Yeah.
and the second one is more how Kelim are Tzura. Yeah. Suspect, not suspect. Yeah.
It's shaped by it.
So he's saying like this. So the second thing is that you could say a few things here. In other words, the seal could have been an amorphous, plain, what's it called, a seamless, no shape and form in it, and obviously it wouldn't make any images. Then it has an image within the seal itself. There's an image within the seal. So he's saying like this. So number one is that the image is within the seal, not outside of it. But more than that, he's saying now this is the image that the whole seal expresses itself. That's what he's adding here. So in addition to the fact that the seal is inside, the image is inside the seal is expressed exclusively through this image. Not exclusively, but the etzem is defined by it, is shaped by it. So it's even deeper. The tzir is the etzem shaped by this flow. In other words, it would be something like in other words, it's not like it has several ways to express itself. There's only one way the seal can express itself now, through this shape.
Because the etzem has a shape.
Would be talk about quantum. It would be not like what would be that the energy when it goes in the container, the eye is the vision, the power of vision, and that's it. Now the power of vision is going through the eye. No other way can it express itself.
and it creates the particle.
Now remember, there is also achlifah d'chtayu. It could change. He's not. That's why it's not exclusive. I wouldn't use the word exclusive, but the etzem is now mitzuyir
Right.
through this through this image.
You could change the letters on the Chaysim.
Yeah. Mavur b'mokmacha hefesh bezeh. It's all the parentheses. And another place explains the difference between this. The hine kol surah b'chinas is galus, as we said earlier. Every shape is already is a form of revelation, is a form of expression. V'zeh sha'etzem mitzuyir. So that what we say now that etzem is mitzuyir. Hu she'is galus ene rak b'chinas gili min etzem kim sha'etzem hu amizgala. So he's adding. So it's not just that there's a gili of the etzem. It's not just that there's a revelation from the essence, but the essence itself is revealing itself.
Okay, but I don't understand the difference, but.
I'll tell you the difference in a moment. Let me finish here. Oh, one second. The whole parenthesis goes to the end of this chapter. V'zeh shayach b'medrei shel hamayla ma'atzilus, and this in the Nimshal is concerns levels that are higher than Atzilus. Shakol hu b'chinas gili ha'atzmis, because there everything is a gili, is a divine, is an essential revelation. V'ha'ikar hu ba'rotzon ha'helyon b'mitzvus, and the primary place where this expression is there, where the etzem itself becomes revealed, is in the divine will within mitzvahs. And the same thing is in the revelations of Torah. Because mitzvahs come in a shape dafka like this. A mitzvah has to be a certain way. The dafka, in this way you do a mitzvah, not another. Like we said with the letters of Torah Shabbat, yeah. But kolsken a Torah Shabbat become a chiluki time. And even more so, the Torah, which comes in many different reasons. So even though the Torah has different reasons, as opposed to mitzvahs is one way and that's it. Nevertheless, it's all giluyim atzmim. They're all essential revelations.
What's the hakol here referring to? All the
Torah mitzvahs, Torah. All the reasons in the Torah.
all the reasons.
Yeah.
Just to read.
This is Arik.
One second. And this is what the shape is inside the in the essence. It's not the revelation. Is not the essence. It's only a reflection. Actually, however, it's a reflection that is bound to, connected to the source. In general, that's a revelation from the essence, not the essence itself. And this is Atzilus, where the revelation through the containers is only a reflection. But it's not a separate reflection, it's not detached. It's a reflection that is attached to the essence. No, he's distinguishing.
So everything he's
Hold on. It's a lot concentrated here.
We're talking about Arik of Atzmus. It's the reflection of the before Atzilus. It's the highest level, except.
Right, and then he comes back and
Exactly.
says,
And the Kalim was formed in Atzilus.
oh, I think it's a separate thing. So, it goes back to explaining what he just says. It's like a new thing.
It is a new thing.
The last line is a new thing.
Atzilus is actually a new thing. It's a new thing.
Nimshal is Mizel. Atzilus, Shagidish, Adei Akem, Mechaz Ha'ol Levad, okay. It's almost like there's a dot before it.
That's the interface.
In the summary, it's a little clearer, but this is a lot of concentrated stuff here. I would say like this. First of all, the sugi is not finished here. The next chapter continues this whole subject. He's going to basically say the primus hakelim is tzalmenu and the chetzenis hakelim is kidmusenu.
Well, it's a little.
Huh?
Say that again.
The inner container
Yeah,
is the tzelem,
right.
is like the
Right.
image within the
Right.
within
The ore
the,
goes into the container, that's the
within
part.
the
That's the
seal.
part, right.
And Chetzenis Hakem, the function is when you make the image inside the wax. That would be the outer container. That's what he's going to say in the next chapter. Because but what he's saying here now.
Now he's saying it's the semen, not the ore, wow.
Yeah. So one second. So one second. Come here,
Is the cake,
What he's really distinguishing here, the Asius is a little confusing because he goes back and forth, but he clearly is saying that there's two things and there's two ways that the etzem expresses itself through the containers, through the giluyim. Here, the containers. In Atzilus, it's a gilim in etzem. And higher than Atzilus, it's etzem bom is galus. That's clearly what he's saying here. Yeah. So it's all in parentheses, because generally speaking, let's just establish, just for clarity, generally speaking, the containers, what he's saying now, remember the second half of this chapter, the first half of the chapter, Tzelem and Demus, Suda and Suda Mitsuda is Eir and Keli. The Eir creates the image in the Etzem, in the essence, which is above the Eir. It's only image, it has nothing, no substance of its own, it's only image, but it's only reflection of its source. A container is an image of the image, so it's still a reflection of the first image, but it's already separate from that's Eir and Keli. But then he says that, but the main place, generally speaking, this whole image thing is in the container level, not in the energy level. And there he goes, now he carries this over, and says that the container has two sides to it. What later he's going to say is the inner and outer container. But basically one side of it is that it's the tzelem, and another side is the dmus. One side of it is, and he gives the example of the seal. The letters in the seal and the letters in the wax. So the letters in the wax are still an impression of the letters in the seal. There's no difference between them in the image. But one is within the essence itself, and one is outside. Okay. Now within the essence itself, he breaks it into two levels here. What's going on, the image on the seal itself. Okay? So let's say the image of a human being on a luach, on a plate, is not the image, the face of the human being itself. So what is the image itself in the essence like? So he says two things. One is that it says Hatzirahu by etzem. The image is inside, is in the source, is in the seal itself. And the second thing is that the actual seal, the etzem, reveals itself through this seal. It's higher, yeah, it's a higher level. Maybe that's again what the two things, again, what he's saying here. Yeah. Yeah, Shabom in etzem, oy shabav achki. That's why he's meramis to the end of the chapter. Yeah. So Atzilus, in Eris, the Kalim of Atzilus are in the seal, are in the Eris, and they create image in the air, and they're not outside. They're not like the wax. That's in Biyah. That's going to be Biyah. Or the outer containers. One second. And then there's higher than Atzilus, where he says, B'chlal, everything there is Pshitus, there everything is Kol Gili Atzmis. So higher than Atzilus, where essentially the Kalim are much weaker and not as dominant. So there, the Etzem is the primary force, and it's just the Etzem comes into shape. That's what he's saying, higher than Atzilus. But you have to remember, higher than Atzilus, he doesn't say it here, you have to understand the shape is not as much shape. So in Atzilus there's much more shape and form. And but on the other hand, higher than Atzilus, you actually have more of the essence manifest itself as shape. So it's more on the interface level. Before Atzilus, it's more expression of the divine. In Atzilus, is more expression of the shape and form from the container perspective.
Atzilus is outside of Atzilus. It's outside.
The question is how Teda mitzvahs fit in here. That's what I was a little confused with. That's some Kim Shetzim Mizgal. So that he just wants to. What he's doing here is qualifying the example. That the example he's using with the wax, with the seal, is an Atzilus, and within that there's in that same example there's also an example of that which is higher than Atzilus.
And what's the mashal? How does that?
So there's two parts.
Seal relate to the higher than Atzilus part.
So he's saying, so he said, there's one part where like this, he says like
No
this.
wax.
That one thing is that there's an image in the seal itself. That's Atzilus. But then there's another thing. The seal now, and let's say the whole power of the royal power that's expressed through the seal
Right.
comes through this image.
Right,
So the image is actually an expression of the etzem,
right.
as opposed to just being an image within the etzem. And that part of it is higher than Atzilus. That second part
It's higher?
is that's where higher than Atzilus is where the dominant of the force of the etzem is coming into tzir. Yeah. In Atzilus the focus is on image and shape. Higher than Atzilus the focus is on the source expressing itself. That's you want to put it in different words.
Focus on the letters of
But it's not the-
of
the seal.
Of the seal.
But it's not-
In Sealus.
And the seal is, the higher way is the actual seal. That the seal is expressed this way.
Yeah.
That's that. You don't focus on.
And listen, in the nimshal it would be that the focus is on the divine coming into a certain shape, or is it on the shape that is a shape of the divine? It really is which perspective you're looking. You're looking from the top down and the bottom up.
Whether you're looking for Aleph or Pella.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, I'll put it to you this way.
Variation
I'll put it to you this way. When you get, let's say, a letter from the king, from the Rebbe, whatever, and you see a seal on it,
Yeah.
so you could say, okay, you know what? I know that he's put his authority behind it, and of course you listen to it, and you have actually his original, but you don't necessarily know everything that's going on about him. But if you study it more, you could say, in this seal lies the kavanah of this melech. Why did he make this decree? What's the reason behind it? In other words, there's the whole story behind the story. See, for all practical purposes, all you need to know is that this is a seal from the melech. That's it. And this is the image of it. So the focus is on the image, and I know that it's from him. But to understand all the power that's invested in it, that this is how the etzem is being nizgala, that's Atzilus doesn't achieve that. That's the higher levels of Atzilus.
But
Now,
we can attach
the question-
ourselves to it through a mitzvah.
But that's what I wanted to say now. V'zel shai b'madei shel ma'al Atzilus, but ikirhu. That's an alien in mitzvahs, but mitzvahs is Atzilus. I got it.
Oh, what's an area?
I got it. Very simple.
That's
Not so simple.
That's higher. That's it.
Without Torah and mitzvahs, you have no idea you can't have Giluyim Atzmi. You could take a defined existence and you could be a moral human being, you can do things better, improve yourself. But that's a Gilui Mina Etzem at best. You're getting a Gilui, in other words, what you're having is you're taking your shape and form of your life and you're improving it and refining it to the point of reflecting what God wants you to do. But this is not at all necessarily a reflection of God himself manifesting in existence. So for example, the sun, the moon, nature is created by God, but not a reflection of God. You can learn things about God. Remember we said before, the difference between a shliach and there's a chassid that can bring you a message from God. So everything on earth is hashgacha pratis. Every cell has messages and lessons of the divine. But there are things that actually reflect the divine. So that's the difference, by the way, between Eris and Keli. A reflects the divine. A Keli expresses the divine. In Atzilus. So the expression is already a step away, but the focus is on the expression, like he said, not on the pshittas. Even though it has an element of energy there, of divine energy. In the level of energy, he said the opposite. Even though it has some identity, it focuses on the source. Right. So A represents God, Kalim represent existence. But both of them are meeting, obviously. They're meeting.
You said we live in a world of expressions.
Right. So they're meeting. Now, what in this existence can we have? Okay, so with this being said, fine. So existence, Kalim, can reflect the divine light. Just like you look at the sun, you think about it, you say the sun reminds me, Shemesh Shemogan Hashem Elokim. It's an example for how God reflects in this world, or it's light as opposed to darkness. All the lessons you learn from Rabbi Masecha. You look at the world, the universe, and you learn lessons from it. When you want to, that's a Gili Mina Etzem. So the Gili of Eris of Atzilus, Kalim are describing. They're describing and giving shape and form to what the energy of Elokus is in Atzilus, the divine message in Atzilus, the divine presence in Atzilus. Where do you see an expression of something higher? You want to know? I want to know something on the divine level, not just. So there's only one place: Ratzon, Hashem's Ratzon and Chachmasur Ratzeinu Shel Kodesh Baruch Hu, manifest in Torah and mitzvahs. So God gave us something. He gave us not just now a creation of mind that you can learn about me, where you can learn elements of the divine. This is who I am. This is a reflection of who I am. Ratzon mitzvahs and Torah is God manifesting in some type of
Who I am, or what my will is.
no, who I am. Who I am, that's who I am. Mitzvahs, the atzmos. So every mitzvah, even though for us it's a detail, whatever, why is this mitzvah, why this mitzvah, not another? Because in some way this manifests atzmos. Torah, with all its different explanations, ultimately these are giluyim atzmim. So this, in general, is so-called the hamshacha from higher than Atzilus. In Atzilus Gufa, this is more air. Kalim is more the other side. He's basically giving you but it's very, very concentrated here. That's why
The mitzvah, you use matter and you create energy.
this parenthesis, this comma, 4 lines before the end of the parentheses, really is like an end of a thing. Because he says, you have to read from the top. He says, there, Gili Asmi. The idea that the etzem is mizgala, you want to know what he had, the power of his intensity, is the levels higher than Atzilus. And then he says, and Iker, primarily, where do you see that? Where is that manifest in Ratzon Elyon and mitzvahs k'mekin b'agulim d'teira? This is in other words seer, but it's a seer atzmi. It's coming from the etzem, is expressing himself.
Still the Malam Atzilus.
V'zeh shatziru ba'etzem. Then the period after Kamash Kos Makmachav should be almost like, okay, done. And now we go back to the lower level. V'zeh shatziru ba'etzem. That's going back to Atzilus now. Remember, he said, look at the beginning of the parentheses, look at the Asius. Lashon 1. So till this fourth line before the end, till Kamash Kosim Makmachad is the explanation of Sha'etzem Mitzuyir Bezeh. And then you see he says the Lashon Shazel Sha'atzir Hu Ba'etzem. That's going back to Lashon Aleph. The first one. That means Atzilus. See, that's what was confusing me, because I thought he was talking about. So that we say tzir in the etzem, the first level, that's already shagilu eina etzem. That's not Torah mitzvahs. Gima odabeman, it's only a reflection, but it's a reflection that's connected to the source. And generally, that's the gili min ha'etzem, not etzem mizgala. That's Atzilus, it's only a reflection. It's only, but it's not a separate. It's attached, and he's going to say that's Pnimis HaKelim. So the Kitzur, yeah. Let's read the Kitzur. The Yagdim in Batzalmen Kidmusenim, and he prefaces by explaining the inyan of the two things, that the human was created in the image and form of the divine. Tzalmeni Kidmusenim. Tzelem Tzura Atzmis. Tzelem is a essential form, shape. Ubederech klal hu ba'er. Generally, it's the energy. Shehurak tzura se'etzem v'lekol gili ba'betzir. Which is just only a tzura. It's only the light is only giving shape, and every gili comes in a shape. V'hu tzura atzmis sheba min ha'etzem u'me'en ha'etzem. It's a tzura atzmis because it's directly reflective of the and in the same, similar to the source, to the essence, to that. And from this image, you know the Metzia is the existence of that, like you said about the daylight, or sunlight, flame. And Kudmusenu, this is generally, by the way, the first interpretation. But Kudmusenu hu ha'kelim she'enu b'chinas dveikus. And Kudmusenu is already tzura min tzura. It's already a form that's the containers that are not dveikus. They're not bound to. How would you define dveikus? Cleave to, bound to. It's more than bound. If something is dovuk,
But I'm not sure if two of them match.
like a flame, right? It's absorbed in,
People is attached.
not absorbed,
Vekas is even more.
attached.
You think it's more than people?
Yeah, skashus is attached, vekus is more than attached. Skashus is attachment, vekus is cleaving, bonding.
Codependent.
That's the lumazeh.
Of a piece with. Maybe.
You think it's not peace, you want to
It's
say
not
dvekus,
peace.
it's like two flames. Dovuk. Some words in English just don't get it, dovuk. Maybe there's no, in English, they don't
Fleeting
tolerate the
doesn't-
concept.
fleeting doesn't make
They don't tolerate, the selfish universe doesn't tolerate the concept of dvekus.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the
You
guy
need-
is such a thing.
You know, you need, yeah, because it's substanceless to be dovuk, you have to,
You have to give up yourself.
Yeah, you have to give up-
The only way to do it.
Yeah. Okay, so it's enem becomes dvekus. V'utsura mitzura, and that's a shape from a shape, and a tsura se'er, meaning the shape of the air. Sheyesh lam shaychus al air, and now he goes to the other side of what he says. So they have a connection to the air, they have a relationship with the air, k'ma yeshus teresh b'ksav. Like remember the letters of teresh b'ksav, dafka those letters, specifically those letters, and they transmit that energy. M'kol mokem ein hakelim l'gabe air, k'ma air l'gabe etzem. Nevertheless, the containers compared to the energy is not like the energy compared to the essence.
Shaykh is not a dvekus.
Right, shaykh is not vekus. And it's not me'ein ha'etzem. It's not similar to that, it's only coming from there. So we said it expresses it, but it's not reflective of it. Uba'er, who's gabras ha'etzem. In air, what dominates, what is the overpowering feature is the essence. Uba'kelim is gabras ha'kelim. And the containers, what dominates is the containers, the identity, the personality. So both have each other within them, but the question is, what is the predominant feature? Now he goes to the second side of it. So b'chlal it's keli, but the primary place of Tzelem Mus is in the containers. Tzelem u'shachokik ba'etzem. Tzelem means it's engraved in the essence. Here he uses a different example, not the chesed. Like letters, this was written, by the way, it could be months or even years after the thing. So it's like, so here the letters are engraved in a precious stone. What would be an example of? I always say, what's ever chukim be'evan tev? Did they ever engrave things in
All the
what?
time.
In diamonds and what?
100%.
They put serial numbers on
There's serial
diamonds.
numbers. IGA,
Okay. But in the olden days, they used to also do that.
no, they do with laser because it's.
But what did they do? What was a mole? There was a thing like in Shas or anything. There's a thing.
They had-
You know, because it's just chukim be'evan tev. You hear it very often.
Gold. Yeah, right.
The ISIS, the
Sure,
Shvatim.
yeah.
What's your
Oh,
question?
in the Urim B'Tumim?
Yeah. The stones.
How
the
many
stones.
Urim?
The
Both bars were engraved.
Okay, right,
Both-
right.
Both bars. were
Red,
engraved.
the stones.
How they engrave it? Huh? No, there's a shamir. There was the worm that they broke the stones with. That they
That was
yeah.
Right, I'm like the stones
Okay.
on the ocean.
So why is he using now Evan Tev? The chesim is more chesim and shaiva. There's the seal and the wax. Letters and okay, just an example like Asis Teresh. Just
to me.
Because it's not about making another object that's like it. It's about the
right. It's like we say engraved letters like the luchas.
Like the locust.
But he adds this example. Okay, just an example for the union of chokuk, not for the second half of the example of the wax. Chokuk be'etzem. Okay, Evan Tev is also a little more fitting to etzem, a beautiful stone as opposed to just a seal. Maybe. U'kamoit selam gufa adam.
cheshivas of the substrate itself.
Yeah. Substrate. That's what you would call chemer.
Yeah, the stuff of in
That's
which
good word.
of which it's made. Yeah.
Okay, kamoit selam gufa adam, like the image of the body of a person. So it's the not it's some gufa not the image, not a picture of it, like the actual shape of the body of the person. That's part of the person. It's part of the face or part of the body. Or kamoit came chins primis hakelim. He doesn't say that in the prim either. Later he says it, but here he says it. That's also primis hakelim shuatzir be'etzem ha'er. You could see that he relies on the kitzur because he adds some things here, and that covered it. So also primis shuatzir be'etzem ha'er. Primis hakelim, like we said, Shem HaTeir is a description of the energy itself. Going back to the
Yeah.
And the Yesh Bechkika Beis Inyanim, here you see how the two things at the end. And in the engraving itself, there's two things. Hatzir hu b'ha'etzem, v'hainu gilim in etzem. The tzir is in the etzem. So the shape and form is in the substrate. Did I say that right? Yeah. V'habeis, and higher than Atzilus, sha'etzem itztayir, that the etzem itself takes on, is formed, takes on shape. V'hainu gili ha'atzmus. That's the gili of Atzmus. V'zeh b'madrega shel ha'mayel ma'atzilus. And that's the levels higher than Atzilus.
That's basically the first.
I'm in awe. Huh?
But that's basically the first level after Atmos. As soon as it starts taking out.
Yeah. He says B'chlol is higher than Atzilus. Listen, this theme is going to go back many times. What's higher than Atzilus? Remember, there's a big picture here. You just have to register it. You know, every piece in every chapter adds components all the time. You can see. There's nothing. It's like a tremendous puzzle here.
But the change from the mashal from the
If you go into the Rebbe
wax-
Shabbat's mind, for example, you could even almost see at times. I could see that you could see like he's almost bavarning something that he said earlier, and like almost like qualifying things that he's constantly doing that. Just interesting how he wrote it. You know, in other words, did it emerge as he wrote, or did it have it all very organized, generally speaking? But times you do see that he adds something a little later that explains. But the fit's very, very.
But I don't see what's the transfer, the change from the original mashal.
You know, let me just conclude, and we can talk more of this. So we conclude here, chapter Reish Pei Tes, 289. If you guys want to go, we could sit till Purim and we'll finish the whole volume. You'll really have Adla Yada properly then. You know, if you have Yada like this, Adla Yada is going to be.
It would be perfect place if we had indoor plumbing here.
No, you don't need it.
I have to go over there.
Indoor plumbing, that's very well said. Okay.
We have to go to the shul.
Those of us that are over 50, basically.
So we'll conclude here. This is page 2586, chapter 280, to Reish Pei Tes, 289. Very good.
Now can I ask you a question, or are you still on with it?
Just this one. There's a, yeah.